Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage, Bob Urey.
I hope you all are enjoying your meals, and please continue to enjoy them and have the desserts. I'd like to begin our program by introducing some special guests we have with us. You know, the progress we've made over the past years just would not be possible without this just amazing vision, leadership, collaboration, commitment of all kinds of leaders, but especially our public leaders who are excellent. And we're honored to have with us today our elected officials. And I would like to just take a moment here so we can recognize those who are with us. And if you'll hold your applause, let me kind of go through the list, starting at the Texas level, up at the state level. We have Representative Garnet Coleman here, who sponsored the creation of the downtown district back in 1995, believe it or not. Representative Harold Dutton and Representative Marianne Perez is here. At the county level, in addition to our county judge, Ms. Lisa Green Ellis is representing Commissioner Rodney Ellis, who was going to be here, but he's in New York at the morning. And then Vince Ryan, our county attorney, joins us. And then from the city, in addition to our mayor on city council, we have Jerry Davis, Vice Mayor Pro Tem, Dwight Boykins, Martha Castex Tatum, Dave Martin, and David Robinson. So now let's show our appreciation for these leaders. Metro Board's real important to us right now. I think you know why. I'd like to take a moment just to recognize the board. Karin Patman, the very hardworking chair of the board, is here. And I know I've seen two of the board members, Jim Robinson and Sanjay Ram, I think are with us as well. And I hope I don't miss any of you. So if we could recognize them, please. We really are thrilled and especially honored to have two excellent leaders of our county and city governments with us who will share a few words. It's really my pleasure to bring Judge Lena Hidalgo, our county judge, to leadership. You just took over in January, and boy, you have worked tirelessly since the beginning of the year to focus on so many different things, our resilience and sort of how we do it in an equitable way, various transportation projects, working with the settlement of the jail bond, various open space and parks and amenity projects, and we could go on with this. And we really are looking forward to working with the county, especially in the area of homelessness and indigent population. We've got some work in progress. We're really looking forward to it. But let me say this, on a personal side, I'm totally blown away by the fact that while she's doing all of the leadership of the county, she's training for the Chevron Houston Marathon, which she also ran last January right after she took office. So we love to introduce you, County Judge. Welcome to the stage, and we look forward to your remarks.
Thank you so much, Bob, and folks, thank you all so much for the work that you do to push us, really, to push elected leaders to build a bolder community, a bolder Houston, ultimately a bolder Harris County. I think even though we're here at the center of our county, everybody gets involved with this area, with this center. Just last night, you know, so many folks descending on Minute Maid Park, all the time folks who work here, folks who play here. This is what ties us all together and brings us together. And it's incredible what you guys do to push us forward, to bring that innovation. And I appreciate, you know, this year's theme. I think it's quite long, and I want to summarize it as, in my mind, it's making the greater Houston area cool, even cooler, right? And the sense of it is you guys recognize that economic development, economic opportunity also includes quality of life issues, that when businesses are looking about at where to move, when folks, the brightest people in the country and the world, are considering where to raise their families, where to go and work, that they are looking at quality of life issues. And that's what you guys have been able to create and to nurture. We at the county want to support that. And that's why we've been working on several initiatives that ultimately get us at quality of life. We all know, as much as we don't like to talk about it, we have to consider flooding and resilience. And I want to say, after yesterday's loss, we have to remember that Houston and Harris County is nothing if not resilient. And it takes sometimes a little bit of trial and tribulation, but I'm hopeful that the Astros will pull through and will bring that spirit, right? Yeah, I know. So on flooding, we don't want folks thinking twice about whether they should move here. We don't want folks flooding, their businesses flooding and wondering whether they should rebuild or thinking about whether they should leave. We want to make sure that we're doing everything possible to move the community forward as quickly as we can. And that's why we've sped up our projects. We brought independent outside folks to take a look at whether we can move, how the county can move its projects faster. And we're doing that, all of those recommendations, to get things done as quickly as possible. We are having conversations we didn't used to have, sitting with our development community and really understanding, if we develop in such a way that increases flooding for everybody else, all of us are out of business. So why don't we work together and make sure we have the detention requirements that we need, so that as we grow, we're not exacerbating the problem. On the one hand, we're working with our flood control district to make the problem better, but on the other hand, we can't make it any worse. And so we've enacted those detention requirements to make sure we're not flooding folks downstream. We're talking about climate change in our projections and our predictions. We're speeding up our drainage projects. All of the smart ideas that the folks in our community bring, those are the ones we're incorporating into our flood control work. I know our community has those ingredients. We've got the restaurateurs, we've got the chefs, the scientists, the students, the workers, we've got the diversity. And we just need to sprinkle in a little bit of green space and transportation and more flood resilience to really elevate some of the work that you guys are doing and helping to do to keep this a thriving region. And so transportation is a big part of it, of course. Today I'm wearing my I voted sticker, and I was proud to vote for Mayor Turner this morning. And And Mayor, it's really a pleasure always to partner with you, and thank you for that leadership. And I was also very, very proud to vote for our Metro bond. We all know what a community looks like that has a true public transportation system, an aggressive, ambitious transportation system, and we haven't been able to do that for lack of funds. All of us have traveled, and we know that our ability to get things done depends on our ability to get there, and that means transit being convenient, being something that on a day-to-day basis we're doing to be able to get to where we need to be, and this is an important first step to get there. We continue to lead the charge. I'm always the voice at a Transportation Policy Council saying, we've tried widening the highways, that didn't work. You build them, you fill them. We're the last community that doesn't have that ambitious level of transit, and Amazon said it. If we want to get ahead, if we want to be competitive and build the future, continue to be at the cutting edge of innovation, we have to focus on transportation. So I'm proud to support that, and at the county, we've been working on the first ever county transportation plan that's unified to look at needs, to have a vision, and also new thoroughfare standards, so that as the county builds roads and transit, we are proactively opening up the space for transit, for bikes, for bike lanes, for sidewalks, so we're not having to go back and fix that on the back end. And of course, there are other issues, right? Environment, our ability to be healthy in the air that we breathe. Veterans Affairs, we've we've done work there. Of course, criminal justice reform, that ties in. We want the future workforce. We want to make sure that our youth are not set in a cycle of recidivism, that folks who are accused of a crime aren't pleading guilty when they're not guilty simply because they can't afford to pay bail. And we're not destroying families, but rather helping nurture our workforce, helping nurture our community. That's the kind of work we're doing, being smart at budgeting, being smart in the way that we share what Harris County and Houston does, and most importantly, allowing folks access to our government. I actually voted at the University of Houston this morning. It's the first time they've had an early voting location. So it was 50,000 students from the University of Houston and TSU that now can vote right on campus. And that's part of the work we've done with our county clerk, Diane Troutman, to make sure that we have vote centers. You know, I've worked in places and lived in places where speaking your mind gets you jailed or killed. Being able to speak our mind, to have a free press, and to vote our way, like our campaign says, is a treasure. It's a blessing, and it's something to cherish. And we take that very seriously in Harris County. So, starting in the past May elections and with this election, on Election Day, everybody can vote at any voting location. Nobody will be turned away because they showed up to the wrong place. The hours are not, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 9 to 4, and then Friday, 9 to 5, 7 to 7, and Sundays it's 1 to 6, and we're fighting to see if we could do it overnight. We've got a lot of work to do, but we are in a hurry to help support the work that you guys do, to really take up that mantle of innovation, of always asking what's next, what's better, how can we keep our community in the cutting edge. How can we make sure that we're not catching up to the 20th century, but planning and preparing for the 22nd? So thank you for your vision and your innovation. Know that I share that. And as always, and Bob knows, we're eager to hear your ideas and to work in partnership with the incredible work that so many people in this room and that in this organization do. So thank you all so much, and thank you for including me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So much appreciated. Thank you so much, Judge. We too look forward to working with you and the county as we go forward. We're so pleased that we're joined by Mayor Sylvester Turner with us today. I can't say enough about his leadership, advancing our Harvey recovery efforts, growing the Complete Communities program, pushing to house homeless citizens, leading on the highway project and really other transportation projects, Transit 2, as well as economic development and innovation and technology. But this list could go on and on and on, but I find that we're just motivated by his contagious enthusiasm and just passion for this city. So, Mayor, we're so grateful to you, and please join me up here, and we'd love to hear from you. Our friend.
Let me thank Bob, and I hope you will continue to be affected by my enthusiasm and contagion for years to come. Did I say that? Yeah, I did. I'm not running the marathon. Just a few more days. But look, let me just say what an exciting time to be back with Central Houston. And Bob, let me thank you for your incredible leadership and commitment and dedication to Central Houston. I mean, you've been out in the forefront, and you've just done some awesome work with some incredible results. So thank you. I mean, very fortunate. Scott, thank you for your leadership, and for the entire board and all of the individuals who have participated, people in the downtown area of Central Houston. Let me thank all of you, because downtown, speaking as a native Houstonian, things have changed quite a bit in Central Houston. Years ago, at 5 o'clock, things were dead. And now, after 5, things are alive. And quite frankly, we have about 8,000 or more people living in the downtown area. And over the next 10, 15 years, that number will probably be about 20,000 or so. So things have changed quite a bit. Let me just touch on the Astros. You know, I told the mayor of D.C. that we were going to lull them asleep. Last night, the night before, it's part of the game plan. So don't be fooled. Don't get scared. You know, as we return to D.C., we shall give them a Houston welcome, you know. And what I would say immediately after Hurricane Harvey, just like the Astros did not give up on us, but rallied on our behalf, this is a time now that Houston must not give up on them and rally on their behalf. So no negative energy, all positive. We shall be okay. And they will bring back, we'll have a series, and I think we'll have a winner on our hands. Let me just say, and Judge Hidalgo, thank you so very much. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your vote. You know, please go and vote again. You know, you voted on the U of H campus, now go to the Texas Southern campus, you know. encourage, take a friend and let me get off of that. How many of you all have voted already? Just a show of hands. How many of you have not voted? All right, there are 5 buses down below that will take you to your early voting. Depending on who you're voting for, though, you can stay here at the lunch. On the projects, there are 4 major flooding projects that we have all pushed for to mitigate the risk of flooding, infrastructure projects. I will tell you that out of those 4, 3 of the 4 have now been approved by the federal government and are now funded to go forward. One of those three is the North Canal project, which has been talked about. Yeah, come on. That project has been talked about since the 1940s, literally for Central Houston, for downtown, for the theater district. It will take that area out of the floodplain. It is where Buffalo and White Oak converge. And even with Tropical Storm Imelda, that lower portion, it did slightly come out of its bank. With this project, which is the largest stormwater project in the state of Texas, $131 million, working with the Harris County Flood Control District, with the federal government, TxDOT, the city of Houston, the TERS. This project, once completed, scheduled to be completed in 2022, will literally remove these areas out of the floodplain. It will benefit the Heights, it will benefit Yale, downtown, a major, 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 major project. And so we are pleased this has been approved and fully funded, and we are ready to move forward. I want to thank Lynn Wyatt for her contribution to the remodeling, rehabbing of Jones Plaza. That's a major, major gift. She is phenomenal, but with her contribution of $10 million, now the $29 million that's needed, that amount has been obtained, raised, and we're ready to move forward. And that will be a beautiful gateway to Jones Hall itself. So I want to thank Lynn Wyatt especially. We are still dealing with homeless situation. We now have about 39 homeless individuals in the city of Houston. And that's not just city of Houston, Harris County, so it's the surrounding area. And about 11 to 1,200 of that number what we would consider to be chronic homeless. And we are addressing that population. And the way to address it is one person at a time. And people might say, oh, all of these homeless people, where did they come from? Let me just tell you, since 2012, the city of Houston has housed about 17,000 homeless individuals. Since I've been mayor, out of that number, we've housed about 6,500 of that number. Pastor Rudy Rasmus is right here, can attest to what we have been doing with respect to the homeless population. We have reduced We have reduced homelessness in the city of Houston by 55%. And even though it may be hard to imagine, but the city of Houston across the country is the model on how to reduce homelessness. We have 3,900. Compare our number, for example, to LA. They have 35 to 40,000. Or Seattle, or New York. Even more homeless population in the city of Dallas. But it requires addressing that number one at a time. Fortunately, we have about 100 homeless coalition partners that we're working with, along with the Downtown Management District. And what we need is not just a housing unit. What we need are wraparound services, because many of the individuals that we are having to address are people who have mental behavioral health issues, substance abuse issues. So it's not just about putting someone in a housing unit or making a housing unit available. It's providing them with the wraparound services that they need, because you cannot go out and issue a citation to someone who's homeless. You know, you cannot do that. City Council passed 2 ordinances to minimize what they could have and where they could be. We were sued, still in federal court. Federal judge issued a temporary restraining order. That temporary restraining order has now been removed because, quite frankly, I was one of the witnesses that was called. And what I said to the federal judge is that we are not trying to penalize the homeless. We're just trying to put them in a better position, in a better place. And unless you provide a gentle nudge, they're not going to move. And so in order to put them in a better place, we got to give them a gentle nudge. We have to minimize what they can have. And what I would say to people in our city, because we have some of the most charitable people that you could find anywhere in the United States. So let me just say this, and let me say it in the most humblest and nicest way that I can. When we do these cleanups, and we just did one a week ago, where we go out to some of these homeless encampments, and we literally we notify them ahead of time that we are coming. We let those who are homeless know that we will house their stuff. We will inventory it and put it in storage because it is their stuff. We will house it, and we tell them you have to move from the area for us to go come in and clean up. And literally, like the last week, we can be out there for 2 days, hazmat suits and all, cleaning up the area. And once we clean it up, they can return. But while we are cleaning it up, we are saying to them is that we have housing available, and we would like for you to take advantage. Some do, some don't. But you have to approach those who are homeless 4, 5, 6, 7 times. And not everyone can be out there, because if you don't have the heart and the compassion, you're not going to be persuasive. So it's not going to happen. But it takes time. And so what I would say to you, be patient with us as we move on this issue, because it's one thing to fill a pothole with asphalt. It's another thing to fill the pothole in people's lives, because these are human beings, and it does take time. And so we're working on it. Last thing what I want to say is that four years ago, the innovative ecosystem in the city of Houston, we were lagging behind. On the Kaufman Foundation report, we were like 31 on the list when it came to venture capital investments. But working with the business community, working with all of the different Greater Houston Partnership and so many others, we have really sped up the process and changing things around, creating an innovation hub, the innovation corridor from downtown to the medical center. So we're doing some creative things. And we have companies that are coming from Silicon Valley to #Silicon Bayou. Generator is here, that's now in the city of Houston. Mass Challenge in Boston has now come to the city of Houston. Bill.com has come from Palo Alto and now in the city of Houston. So we're doing some incredible things. And over the past year, the city has been working in collaboration with Central Houston and the Downtown Redevelopment Authority to develop and expand downtown's innovation ecosystem. And today, we are announcing the Downtown Launchpad, an exclusive space for entrepreneurs and startups from around the world to explore the possibilities and expand their ideas. Located in the Amegy Bank's 1801 main building and in partnership with the Cannon, the 17,000 square foot Launchpad will be anchored by Mass Challenge and Generator and will also be a place for incubators, labs, co-working, and corporate innovation. This enables startups and entrepreneurs to move seamlessly through the stages of startup production, all in one space. In addition, the Launchpad will be part of the Cannon's integrated vertical village, surrounded by a community of entrepreneurs, small business and services, unlike any other workspace in the city. Amegy Bank has a long history of commitment to reinvesting in the local community and is dedicated to serving Texas families and businesses. And through its partnership with the Cannon, Amegy has taken its commitment to Houston to the next level by converting its downtown building into a robust innovation environment that aligns all of the players across the entrepreneurial spectrum, the corporations, mentors, investors, service providers, development programs, and startups themselves. We are confident that this combination of offerings and capabilities will unlock significant value for downtown, helping to attract and retain companies from around the country. We are not walking into this new innovative ecosystem in the city of Houston. We are sprinting. We are not second to any. We'll not be second to Silicon Valley or to what they're doing on the East Coast. In Houston, we are doing it our way. And today, we are officially announcing the Launchpad. The city of Houston is taking off to another level. Congratulations to all involved.
Thank you. Very exciting news. Mayor, again, thank you so much for your excellent leadership. Before we go further, I'd just like to take just one little moment of personal privilege to recognize my wife, Gail, down here. She has been remarkably patient to make me not stay at home. So thank you, dear. It's now time to turn to the annual meeting business. For that, I want to bring to this, the podium up here Scott Prochazka, who's the chairman in Central Houston, but also the president and chief executive officer of CenterPoint Energy. We deeply appreciate Scott's leadership, both in the community and also at a more personal level. Let me just say I so value his counsel as we've worked on the last few years in strengthening the organization. So please help me in welcoming Scott Prochazka. Thank you. Scott, there you go, my friend.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be the one person up here who does not talk about the Astros, only because I think that it's been well covered. But I do have great faith, and I've already placed a bet with some colleagues up in D.C. So I've got some food on the line here, but I'm hopeful that in the end I get shipped some crabs our way to enjoy it down here, and I've got confidence that it's going to happen. Bob, thank you for the introduction. I'd like to thank Jonathan Brinsden, who's the president and CEO of Midway. He's also Central Houston's vice chair and the chair-elect, who's going to take my role at the end of this year when my term ends. Let me also add my sincere appreciation to Nilofar Malavi, who has also agreed to follow Jonathan's leadership when his term ends. So Nilofar will be our incoming chair following Jonathan. You know, each year we begin with a few minutes of annual meeting business. It's unavoidable. So let me start by recognizing our members. It's very important to do so. Please take a moment, if you will, to review the member list in your programs and on the screens. We're deeply appreciative of our members' support. You, in fact, are the ones who make our organization as successful as it is. We do have one important business item to conduct. In anticipation of the meeting, our Central Houston members elected directors by proxy. A list of board members is also included in the materials at your table. Names marked with an asterisk indicate our newly elected or re-elected directors. I'd like to ask these and other members of our Central Houston Board of Directors to please stand. If you would do so now, I would appreciate it. Thank you very much for your service. In addition to our governmental leaders that Bob discussed earlier, I'd like to recognize the leadership of our sister entities. And if you would, when I mention your name, would you please stand and remain standing, and we'll show our appreciation at the end. The chair of the Houston Downtown Management District, Leslie Ashby. The vice chair and acting chair of the Downtown Redevelopment Authority, Michelle Sabino. I understand Michelle was not able to be here today. Houston First Corporation Chair, David Mintzberg. The Theater District Chair, Perrin Leach. Discovery Greens Chair, Roxanne Newman. And Buffalo Bayou Partnership Chair, Jeff Taylor. Would you all please join me in expressing our appreciation? I'd also like to recognize the outstanding staff members of Central Houston, as well as those in the above-named organizations. Would you all please stand? You do a lot of work for us each and every day. We want to appreciate you as well. Thank you. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't extend a great deal of appreciation to Bob Urey for his tireless leadership of this organization and his unique ability to convene groups that are necessary to move our agenda forward. Many of you may or may not know this, but Bob is in his, I think, 36th year of leading this organization. I didn't even know that was possible. But Bob has proven you can be around in this leadership role for one organization. That demonstrates his commitment to the city of Houston. So Bob, thank you very much for your leadership. The goal of Central Houston, quite frankly, is to foster a thriving hub of commerce, culture, and living. Basically, a central city that is the soul of our great metropolitan area. As you can see in the member brochure that's at your seat, the organization takes pride in being a visionary, action-oriented catalyst in bringing partners together to make change. In short, we pride ourselves on getting things done. And these days, people can't help but take note of the progress we've accomplished. Indeed, we've experienced unprecedented growth in the downtown and the central city, as evidenced by the following. More than 10,000 people now live in downtown. That compares to 2,500 back in 2004. And about 70,000 or more than 70,000 within a 2-mile radius. We have more residential construction that's underway. Today we have 42 residential buildings. 15 years ago we had 23. We now have 28 hotels with more than 8,400 rooms available, providing hospitality to an increasing number of meetings, conventions, and major events, and that compares with 14 hotels and 4,500 rooms back in 2004. We have more than 430 food and beverage options, including 4 food halls. We've got exciting changes in multiple workplaces with literally hundreds of millions of dollars being spent to invest to improve those areas, and great public spaces that are literally used by everyone, workers, residents, and visitors alike. You know, I could go on with a number of other items that we've worked on, but I believe we all agree that our collective efforts to reinvigorate Houston's downtown and central city have virtually paid off. And this reinforces the needs and the value for organizations such as Central Houston. Our strategic focus continues to be guided by Plan Downtown, which is a 20-year framework that many of you participated in preparing a couple years ago. The plan envisions downtown as the greatest place to be, the premier business and government location, and the standard for urban living and innovative leader in connectivity. We and our partner organizations have moved swiftly to implement the plan. And for Central Houston, what it means for us is that we focus on 4 things. First, we must maximize a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for civic enhancement as TxDOT rebuilds the freeway infrastructure around the downtown area. This includes new and existing gathering places, parks, greenways, caps, bridges, all that link downtown with the thriving urban neighborhoods nearby. Successfully guiding a project of this scale is ambitious because it literally impacts all of us. We assisted the formation of a facilitation group, which is led by the City of Houston and includes TxDOT and public agencies, civic, and community organizations. This group will help ensure that the community concerns as well as civic opportunities are realized. Doing this massive project right is critical to our future. Each day, more than 750,000 vehicles, almost 750,000 vehicles, use the 4 freeways that are involved. These vehicles must be efficiently and safely accommodated. We must also consider and incorporate alternative methods of transportation, such as bus, rail, walk, bicycling, rideshare, and whatever the next generation of transportation might be. This leads us to our second strategic priority, and that is advancing our regional transit system as part of the 20-year, $7.5 billion Metro Next plan. This plan includes more than 500 miles of the following: a bidirectional regional express network using 2-way HOV lanes, new Metro Rail Rapid BRT or Bus Rapid Transit service, new and improved park and ride facilities and transit centers, light rail extensions, and fast, frequent, and connected bus service, all with the commitment to improve the customer experience, safety, and security. Metro is asking voters to approve this plan and the use of up to $3.5 billion in financing to be matched by federal grants. We ask that you please vote yes on Proposition A on the ballot. Our region cannot afford to lose this referendum, and this has been discussed earlier and supported by many. Our third strategic priority is to increase our focus on recruiting new employers to the downtown area. We continue to engage both existing and new employers in open communication about the downtown's ever-increasing vibrancy as a premier work environment, especially for young urbanites. We also recognize that there's challenges, however, including homelessness, which the mayor discussed, and the highway construction project, which I briefly mentioned. Fortunately, we are engaged in new collaborative efforts to address these. Despite our challenges, the downtown office market remains strong, with signed leases last year totaling more than 4 million square feet and 13.7 million square feet of office buildings either under construction or reconstruction presently. Our fourth strategic priority, and the focus of our panel, which I'll introduce here in a minute, is to facilitate a growing technology and innovation corridor in the central city, anchored by downtown to the north, Rice University's investment in the Ion in the Midtown area, and the Texas Medical Center at the south end of the region. We believe that the most successful emerging ecosystems require density, startups being in close, regular contact with other creators who share a willingness to explore what's possible. This concept of innovation clusters is essential to establishing a digital technology footprint, which our panel will discuss here in a few moments. Since we gathered last year, the momentum continues to build. TMC3 is moving forward. Rice's construction of the Ion progresses in Midtown. While in downtown, we've seen an influx of high-tech companies such as Petrol.ai, Arundo, and LionGuard. We've also seen an emergence of key ecosystem components that make our city attractive to these startups. The Ion Smart Cities Accelerator, which is backed by Microsoft and Intel, was recently opened, as was Accenture's Houston Innovation Hub. In partnership with the Downtown Redevelopment Authority, we announced in September Generator, which was also mentioned earlier, our city's second top 15 nationally ranked accelerator, along with the global nonprofit Mass Challenge, which started earlier this year. Add to these the mayor's exciting announcement today of Launchpad, which he just discussed, as part of an inclusive vertical village of innovation. This will be a place where startups from here and around the world come to grow, which is exactly what we want. Our focus on these four priorities clearly is advancing the community's vision for downtown and the central city. But more will be accomplished through the commitment, coordination, and efforts of many partnering companies, organizations, as well as institutions working together to make this a great place, the heart of a great global city. I want to thank you all for being here, and thank you for helping drive our vision of Houston forward. We appreciate it. Next up, we've got an exciting panel for you. We're fortunate today to hear from recognized experts in innovation, acceleration of business, venture capital formation, and the creation of innovative ecosystems. We really truly do seek to better understand how all of this works together. So let's begin by introducing our distinguished guests. Our moderator for the event is Abby Turner. She is a partner at Generator. She started at the organization as the first full-time employee and has helped grow it to 17 G-Beta early-stage accelerator programs across 8 states and Canada. Come on up. I'll just have all of you come up as I'm introducing. Second is William Worley Hurley. He's an inventor and has been for more than 20 years. He holds 14 patents, is a certified master inventor by IBM, and has a history of research and development with Apple. Thank you for being here. Tig Savage. He's co-founder and managing partner of Revolution, an institutionally backed early-stage venture cap fund investing companies around the country. Tig, thank you for being here. And last but certainly not least, Kate Whittles. Kate's a partner at HR&A Advisors. She specializes in advising governments, developers, and business clients in growing tech and innovative ecosystems around the world. So thank you all for being here. Happy to have you. And Abby, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here. We are incredibly excited to be here with you today, and I'm incredibly excited and honored to be joined up here by these three amazing individuals. We have heard a lot about innovation today. The word has been mentioned quite a bit this afternoon, and I'm incredibly excited, too, that it's the second year in a row that this topic is the topic of this amazing event. So we're going to dive right in, and the first question that I want to ask everyone, because we're all coming today from different aspects of innovation and different ways that we see innovation and experience it during our day-to-day jobs, and I'm sure that you're all coming from your own perspectives as well, is I'd love to hear from you three just how you interact with that on a day-to-day basis, what it means to you, and why you think it's important.
So that's great. I believe that innovation is very much driven by culture. Be it at a large corporation, be it at a city or a startup, I believe that it's all about the culture and the people and how you're capturing those ideas and how you're bringing them into some fruition.
Yeah, so I invest in startups, so I really believe that this is among the best times to be an innovator and an upstart and a disruptor. But that also means that it's among the most dangerous times to be an incumbent. And there's a great opportunity for incumbents to embrace that. A number of the things that Judge Hidalgo or the mayor, or even Scott mentioned, that are things that are going on in the city here, not just companies, but infrastructurally. Transportation is being transformed in many ways, but fundamentally, many of the new transportation paradigms are being enabled by technology-enabled companies. So I think that innovation to us is not just a means to an end for business, but really an opportunity to transform businesses.
Yeah, and I think, so I work with cities across the country, and I think when we think about innovation, we need to think about authenticity. And it's really about the underlying strengths of that city and evolving that and progressing it into what will be the next invention for that city. So it's not trying to be some other city, it's trying to be what is authentic about Houston and innovating on your core strengths to progress, to get more people to Saturn and another planet.
Yeah. So Kate, I actually want to start with you for our first question, because your firm, HR&A, you essentially fuel economic development in communities largely through a lot of placemaking activities. And so my question for you, you've done projects for the co-working space behemoth WeWork, you've done a New York City tech ecosystem study and an innovation district roadmap for the University of Georgia. And I'm really curious, how do those communities come to you? What do they identify as being a driver behind wanting to do this type of study or this type of work in the first place? And what are some of the strategies that you employed to help them accomplish what they want to accomplish, and what do those outcomes look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think so these types of places either evolve organically because you have a brand university like MIT and you have a subway station there and you then evolve and you have land, right? And that's kind of how Kendall Square evolved. Or they're created by brute force and will by the key stakeholders of the city because they realize that their future, be it hospital, university, just institutions of the city, their future is tied to the strength and competitiveness of that city. And so in a place like St. Louis, where they got together, or in North Carolina, Research Triangle Park, they they knew that their place was not going to remain competitive unless they got together and created these places to encourage new business development, to encourage their existing businesses to think differently, to create a place where talent wants to be so that new businesses will come and event. And that's what's so exciting about what's happening in Houston, that there's this collective force realizing we want to push Houston forward. We are a great city. We have amazing strengths. We are inventing lots of amazing things. And let's just keep moving forward as a whole city and creating all of that infrastructure and resources for innovators.
Yeah. So, Tig, I actually want to go to you next because as we're on the topic of place, you invest in startup companies. It's no secret that the majority of the venture capital going into startups is going into California-based startups, right? But Revolution has a really different approach to that. And I'm sure in some of the communities that Kate was just mentioning are some of the communities that you have invested in. And so can you talk a little bit more about Revolution, your thesis, and the bus tour as well, because that's a fun piece.
Yeah, sure. So Revolution's a little bit unique. In that we've really built a firm on investing outside of the places where venture capital typically had been historically deployed. So something like 75% of venture capital is invested in California, New York, Boston, but over 75% of the Fortune 500 companies are headquartered elsewhere. And as technology has been emancipated and the bar has been lowered in terms of establishing ecosystems, it's become much easier for companies to be started outside these locations that historically really needed a corpus of engineers, even the accounting and law firms, things that were set up, the things that sort of made Silicon Valley what it is. So we started Revolution 15 years ago. I co-founded it with the AOL founder, Steve Case, and we put it in DC for no other reason than that's where we were. And we knew we were going to have to hop on airplanes and travel in order to build companies. And we decided to sort of try to fight above our weight and not compete with the folks who were incumbents in these areas, but take advantage of these trends. 15 years later, I think we've really built sort of one of, if not the leading brands that is focused on making investments outside of Silicon Valley. And it's been, knock on wood, not just something that we think is important, but it's we've continued to be a top-performing fund or a top-performing series of funds. So I think there's economic muscle behind that. But it's not something that has happened without intention. So we spend our days investing in these companies, et cetera, but we've also really worked hard at putting a spotlight on these opportunities. So Steve Case, we're from DC, not a great place to be in this crowd, although I will say I was at the game tonight or last night, and I've emailed every one of my friends from Houston because it was the most gracious crowd I've ever been around. I mean, that would not have been the same if it were a Yankees game. So thank you. And I will say one other thing. The Reverend here is a man of God, but he's a man of Houston first, because when he came down, I asked him to pray for the Nationals, and he refused to do that. Anyway, so we're based in DC, and one thing that we really understand is sort of how political campaigns work. So we've essentially built bus tours that look like campaign bus tours. And every 6 months, we pick 5 cities that we think are really emerging. We put Steve on a bus, and he really rides the bus. We roll it out there. We convene thought leaders, folks like you who represent the local ecosystems. We bring in government leaders, et cetera, and we really try to put a spotlight on it. That's not something, obviously there's a benefit to us, but it's not something we do just because of us. It's something that we do because we think it's a big opportunity. So that's a little bit about Revolution.
Okay, Worley, you're next. So we talked a lot about community with both Kate and Tig. Now I want to talk about corporations, because you have quite a bit of experience working in them and with them as it relates to innovation. And so talk a little bit about the work that you do around innovation with corporations and how you help these companies think about their products and their services and what they're delivering into the community to think not only, what do we need to do right now to stay ahead, but generations ahead.
Well, that's a great question. I mean, most of the time that I travel around the country and around the world, It's because I'm the startup guy, and all the corporations want to have that startup DNA. And you hear a lot about this. Like, we want to inject that startup DNA into the company. We want to do these things. And what I often tell corporations, what I often find to be the case is, it's not that the corporation is not being innovative, it's that it's starving innovation out internally. And Microsoft, having just released their earnings yesterday, is an amazing example of this. For the last 20 years, you could look at Microsoft and you could probably say they had Windows and Office, and they kind of had their products, and they didn't really do anything, right? And what Satya has done in there is he's come in and he said, well, you know, that doesn't mean that there's not innovation going on. Our engineers are starting side companies and doing other projects and volunteering, and they've kind of taken it and transformed the culture, which again, culture is key, into an organization where they're now letting that innovation breathe within that organization. I often tell corporations it's a difference between reaction and response. One is voluntary and the other is not. And I see all of the time when I listen in on meetings, you see somebody come in and they have an idea, and the response to the manager is not to say, hey, that's great, this is how we can help fulfill that vision you have and help integrate it into the company and provide you a career path. It's a reaction that's just a knee-jerk of like, well, we don't do that, or focus on the thing we're focused on. If you want to be innovative, you by default will cannibalize the existing lines of business you have in some way or some form. I mean, that is a fact. And so you have companies that are very good at that, and you have companies that are very bad at that. The examples run rampant, but it's really about the culture. We live in the greatest time to be alive ever. I mean, I can remember when I was young having to cut UPC codes out of cereal boxes and ride my bike to the post office, and maybe 6 to 8 to 12 weeks later, I got a little piece of electronics and a kit on how I could try to build something. And my 3-year-old can go on Amazon and have like web services and a computer and everything he needs delivered in like 2 hours by Prime. So it's an amazing time.
Only his son, 3 years
It's
old.
amazing. It's an amazing time to be alive. And so there is no excuse for you as a startup or a corporation or a government or a city to not be innovating. It is literally all around you. You just have to become a participant in the system and make sure that you have a culture that supports those people that are trying to take that risk.
Are there any specific as it relates to really driving that culture forward, are there any specific things that you've seen certain companies do really well or not so well as it relates to fostering that in the first place?
Absolutely. Look, I have a list of things I tell corporations, and it's funny because I can't believe people still have me come out, whether it's in my startup role or my role at Ecliptic Capital at the fund, they're always asking the same questions, and the answer has not changed, right? You want to have certain principles. You want to be able to respond to opportunities, not react, right? You want to be able to influence things, not control them. You don't want to put all these tight, restrictions around your employees. Google is a great example that very early said, we're going to give you 20% of your time to work on whatever you want, because they recognized that innovation was going to be going on. The difference is if you're trying to control it and constrain it too much, you not only choke the innovation out of the organization, but more importantly, you miss out on these opportunities. They're happening, right? You need to be aware, and they're happening in the city, they're happening in the corporations. So there's a whole set of rules they can follow, but at the main point, it's about culture. The thing I see, the only difference is you either have a culture that's innovative or you don't. And if you don't, it's either because you don't want it, right? It's a business that is long tail and they don't want to change. If there's no need, if it's not broke, there's no need to repair it. Or you're not doing the right things because it's risky. And the thing that I always hear from corporations is, entrepreneurship, we want intrapreneurship, right? We want our corporation to be like entrepreneurs. The word is French, and the word means the person who takes the risk. And so if you're not going to allow for a culture and an environment that celebrates the risk, that provides the safety nets for people to take those chances, then you're not going to get to the point of innovation you want to be.
So Kate, just as innovation poses both opportunities but also risks and challenges for corporations, the same is true for cities, which you have a lot of experience working within. So thinking about, just how innovation has affected us so far with ride sharing, food delivery, Instagram, I'm sure all of these things are things that you're keeping in the back of your mind as you're working within a community and trying to place make. So how do you factor innovation and these new trends in, and make sure that you're working with and not against those factors as you're doing your job?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's people who chase products and shiny things. And all of those things are going to change over time, right? And then there's people who think about, well, who is actually in that place? The commonality is people. I like to tell a story that in New York, when the RFP went out for Hudson Yards, which just opened, the iPhone did not even exist. So creating places take time. You don't know what those innovations are going to be. But what you do know is that people and people's desire to be around each other, people's desire to learn and interact and produce and support their families will continue. And that's what you have to think about when you're designing these places.
Yeah. Worley, I'm coming back to you. So in the announcement for your Equals program, which I'm hoping you can share just a little bit on, I'm going to read a quote that you said in the press release. So I've been an advocate of the widespread access to information and technologies my entire career. These technologies have the power to change lives, reinvent industries, and create entire new economies. Women and girls play a vital role and are fundamental to an ecosystem of innovation. Gender equality must be the focus of the technology industry if we are to continue to innovate in the future. What steps can Houston as a community, and even walking out of this room, all of us today, take in order to really take that to heart? And how does that elevate Houston by doing so?
That's a great question. So I had a very skewed career. When I worked at Apple, my boss was a woman. Her boss was a woman. My boss's boss was a woman. And it's just a very progressive company. And I left Apple and I went to IBM. And I was like, I work for a bunch more women. And then I went to a meeting about the title of the thing was the issue of women in tech. And I was like, I know, right? They have taken over. Like, I am never gonna get into management, clearly. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, and so I just had this so it was only when I went to that I started realizing, basically, in technology, it tends to be male, it tends to be white male, it tends to not do this. And as I travel around the world, working with the entrepreneurship program at CERN that we founded, working with the UN and UN Women and stuff, you start seeing innovation in all these different environments, right? And you start seeing this benefit of cross-populating all of that. And so I think, for a city to really be able to take advantage of that, it's like, one, participating in programs like Equals is great. Equals was not, though, as Kate said, things don't just happen overnight. We were invited for a British Airways flight where they took 100 innovators and we did a hackathon in the air, flying from California to London to present at the G8. And as I like to say, it was 98 of the world's greatest innovators, Craig Newmark and me. But we went through, thank both of you, appreciate that. It's like Rick and Morty. Those ladies get it, they get it. But basically, we started a program for women, and we found that it was incredibly hard. It failed. It was called Advisor. We had some of the best women, Kimberly from Black Girls Code and Susan Black and everybody, and I was the only guy on the team. It was amazing, and it didn't go anywhere because it's very hard to make that shift in thinking in a corporation or a city or in any organization. Not that people don't want to do it. It's just sometimes you're trying to force opportunities where they're not. You haven't created things. And so what we tried to do with Equals was, instead of having, again, this control versus influence and kind of controlling that environment, we tried to bring organizations from around the world together to participate. And so when I look at Houston, I see an incredibly diverse culture. It's one of the biggest cities in the nation, one of the biggest cities in the world. It has all of this potential. I think it's really about elevating those people that are doing well, and a younger and younger age. Like, you don't want to just say, like, well, we need to have diversity, so that's 3 women managers. It's like, I guarantee you, in the city, in the corporations, there are tons of people, women, minorities, et cetera, that are already doing amazing things. And sometimes they're doing it very early and sometimes very low level. So it's really about giving voice to that and giving an equal opportunity for that to be something that comes up in the workplace and then is rewarded, right? The risk-taking. It is a huge issue for me because I now have had the experience of talking to literally, thousands and thousands of people around the world. There are 480 organizations that participate in Equals. Doreen Bogdan is a great example. She is the first elected official in the UNITU in 153 years that is a woman. And that's kind of insane just statistically, right? Like if you just think about it, you would have thought sometime in 153 years there would have been a woman, since the organization, by the way, is 70% women, that would have rose to leadership, right? That just makes sense. So I think it's really about giving voice and providing that opportunity, but not placating to it, right? And not, it has to be genuine. And there's so many amazing women in tech that I work with every day. And they're definitely there. They're definitely in the company. They're definitely in the city. It's incredibly important to bring that out and just provide kind of that platform. And again, not to harp on culture, that comes back to culture. It comes back to the culture of the leadership. It comes back to the culture of the organization.
Yeah. Based on the discussion today and some of the announcements that were made, I think it's pretty clear that the culture of the leadership in this city is really embracing that and fostering it. So thank you.
Which is awesome.
And that goes to some of the remarks that Scott was making earlier, just about this innovation corridor that's being created here. And so, Tig, you go to a bunch of different communities across the country. You're seeing, lots of different assets that each of these communities has. We talked about one of the assets here being some of the innovation that's happened to date around space technology, clean tech, health tech. How can Houston leverage these legacy industries? Or maybe, it's not necessarily leveraging those legacy industries, but what do you think that Houston needs to be focusing on in order to bring more of that venture capital, more of that innovation, more talent here?
Well, listen, it would be presumptuous of me to say what Houston should or shouldn't do. But I can talk about some things that are in common, in places that we do see vibrant communities developing. One is not necessarily being the Silicon of X. We see a lot of companies that early on describe themselves as the Uber of X or and what that oftentimes really indicates is it's a company that's searching for its product market fit, hasn't really described it yet, so it's looking for some kind of analogy. Whereas once these local ecosystems really get some footing, it's not really the Silicon X, it's that thing. And a major contributor to that, and unfortunately there's no silver bullet to it, but I can give a couple of examples, is a big local success. So if Indianapolis, for example, had a company called ExactTarget. It was this little software company, ultimately became a reasonably big software company, started by some local Indianapolis folks, and it was bought by Salesforce for a couple $1 billion. That was a huge transformational thing for Indianapolis, not just because Salesforce bought a company and all of a sudden the tallest building in Indianapolis now says Salesforce on it, but because the people who built that company didn't leave. And they started providing mentorship. They started providing sort of software or startup assistance. They put capital into those businesses, but it also gave the local community, my guess is similar to the folks around here, something to point to, right? There were these direct things that came out of it, the mentorship, and also, but there's the indirect ones, which is said, you know what, we can have another one of those ExactTargets. I mean, Revolution is totally a product of a bunch of people who came to DC and were not originally from DC because we built this thing called AOL, and then that thing went away, but a bunch of people stuck around. So it's hard to say, what does Houston need to do to have success, other than to liberate these people and celebrate them. Because success begets success. And then also what happens is you start getting this, the people in these companies have a taste, right? They've been in entrepreneurial businesses and they've decided that they want to give that a try. And there's an ecosystem that, the founders of the prior companies put a little money in them, and all of a sudden you have a significant sort of seeding of the ground. So those are things that we've often found in common in these companies. And there's, as I said, there's no silver bullet, but there is a psychology of sort of embracing that's necessary for success there.
And I would just add to that the psychology aspect of it. I don't think they're legacy industries. They're the strengths of Houston, and that's where the innovation is going to come from. And we have to figure out how to set them up for success for the next generation, be it places, be it empowering the workforce, be it just figuring out how we can diversify the workforce and give them the tools to succeed and encouraging that opportunity. But it's not about being something else. It's about being authentic to what Houston is really good at.
Yeah, I mean, tagging on to that, being from Austin, everybody, in tech in Austin thinks Houston is about just energy, right? And that's it. And maybe that's the case, and that would be okay. There is so much innovation that has happened in the energy industry that has built Houston. It is a super innovative industry, regardless of any of your biases against or for it or whatever. And you're exactly right. There is already a ton of innovation going on. It's not necessarily about trying to transform it into something new, but rather to build off the foundation that you already have.
What are some of the ways that you've seen policymakers in the various communities that you've worked within help cheerlead and celebrate that kind of activity?
I mean, there's a couple things, right? It's figuring out how to lower the barrier of entry to take risk. And that is ensuring you have the skills to be able to do that. So really reinforcing our education system and workforce development, introducing computer science in K through 12, and the like. It's also setting up funds and giving people access to money and resources. So whether it's labs, whether it's low-cost office space, and it's also setting up competitions and a culture for creating and doing. And that's what's really exciting about what's happening in Houston, what's happening in Midtown at the Ion, and what's happening at the Launchpad. Houston is putting that infrastructure in place to encourage people to try and test and become entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm. As we're talking about infrastructure and continuing to build around innovation and support innovation, Ty, your fund provides a lot more than just money. Talk to us a little bit how, using that as a microcosm of what Houston or any community across the country could do to help support innovation. How do you support your portfolio companies beyond the cash?
Yeah, so you're right. There's a lot of cash in the venture capital business, more and more cash. So that's really table stakes. It's sort of the price of entry. It's not really a differentiator, and it hasn't been for quite some time. For us, and there probably are some analogies. There are a couple of areas. So our approach is a little different than most venture capital firms that have that invest in lots and lots of things, see which one sprouts up, and sort of jettison the ones that don't and focus on the ones that are promising. We typically make fewer investments, more concentrated, and that means that our success rate has to be higher on those. And in order to do that, we are very focused on working closely with those companies. And the things that we do and the kinds of things that folks around this room could be extremely helpful with are bringing expertise to the table. So there's been a lot of talk about some of the transportation innovation that'll be necessary to the next generation of success in Houston. Well, if you think about the things that are driving a lot of that, I mentioned earlier, it's a lot of it's tech-driven. So we had this sort of macro thesis a long time ago that transportation was going to transform. We invested in this company, I don't know, a dozen years ago, something like that, before people were investing in rental car companies. And it was an idea. We sort of came up with this idea, put it together. It ultimately became this company called Zipcar, which essentially, once people had little computers in their pocket, this utopian hippie dream of sharing cars all of a sudden was not, subjugated just the utopian hippies. But we needed to sort of bring that to mainstream. So we built a board that really helped impact this idea to transform. We brought in a management team with real expertise from big places like GM and Carrie Limousine, et cetera, who had some expertise, but then surrounded them with great engineers. And then we brought in Lee Iacocca and put him on the board. And the job of Lee Iacocca, so Lee Iacocca, many know, he's the chairman of Chrysler and invented the Ford Mustang. His job was to open doors and put a spotlight on a concept that was scary to people otherwise and make it acceptable, just as he did elsewhere. We brought in the one guy who'd been the only CEO of both Avis and Hertz. And he brought some sort of managerial expertise. And this is sort of in the very early days of sort of NetJets and things like that. There was one company that had fractionalized NetJets, which is, you know, flying around in jets, from into by the hour. And that's what we were trying to do for cars. And that expertise enabled management to open doors, have a little bit of experience, and move forward. And that was really the first generation of the sharing economy. And you know, that ushered in things like Uber, et cetera. And it would have been possible without sort of established great folks around the table to give the management teams the leeway to be successful, but also to lend to them the value of their traditional expertise.
Yeah, and I want to tag on that right quick. I know we're about to close, but I want to say something to the audience. I'll speak directly to you. You know, my longtime friend, Mike Irwin, has just launched a new fund called Ecliptic Capital that I'm part of. And what really got me excited was Mike's thesis, because there is a lot of capital in the world. There's not a lot of capital in Texas, right? So we still need the capital in addition to the expertise. California will get 70+ billion of investment this year, as you were noting. New York, over 14, 2 in Texas. We have as many Fortune 500 companies. We have great university systems. We have an amazing entrepreneurial ecosystem. We have 4 of the top 10 largest cities in the world in a 3.5-hour radius. And so I think it's important to note that while there is a lot of capital in abundance in the world, like, we are still lacking. Like, capital still needed in Austin and Houston and San Antonio and Dallas, for sure. And so I think that it's you know, the right capital, and you want that attention. But I think we need to make sure that, you know, all things are about a balance. That we still, just because Houston has these successful projects doesn't mean we don't need to put capital into Houston, right? There's a lot of opportunity for the capital and the expertise.
Right. Well, before they start playing the music over us, I want to say thank you so much to the 3 of you for joining us. Thank you, Bob, for having us here, and thank all of you.
We have a little gift here for everybody. And Tig, you know, we just want to show you how incredibly gracious we are, okay? We'll make you an honorary Astro, Tig.
He'll be, if you watch a game tomorrow night, he'll be right behind home plate. And so I'm going to challenge him to wear the Astros kit tomorrow so we can all see him on national TV right behind home plate.
That is a serious challenge.
Okay. Thank you to you, and thank you to all of you. Go Astros.